A very good morning to you. This is a Newscheck, a program that seeks to inform you on the daily happenings in Kenya, and we look at what is happening across other countries, other counties in this particular country, and we'll also be crossing over to find out what probably has been trending elsewhere as well. Now, this particular morning, our country has been facing quite a number of issues that are currently shaping headlines. This is the flooding situation, and of course, we are also in the midst of a coronavirus global pandemic, and there is also a lot that has been served in terms of matters politics. The Jubilee party has attracted quite an attention in the recent days. That will be forming part of our conversation this particular morning. And indeed, of course, we'll also be taking you to different functions that are currently underway in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, and other parts of the country as well. That is how we do it right here on Newscheck. My name is Serfine Achieng, and our sign language interpreter is Susan Thuku. It is the 20th day of the 5th month of the year 2020. And right now, we want to begin straight away by helping you understand a bit of facts about coronavirus. We know that there's a lot of information that has been shared on social media, and people just keep saying a lot of things, and questions are still arising about this new breed of virus that we're yet to understand. And here on KBC Channel 1, what we have been doing is in each and every of our bulletin, we ensure that we inform you and create some sort of awareness on what you need to understand about coronavirus. This is what we had for you this morning.
In this regard, we wish to appeal to the population and the refugees again to stay at home, to avoid interacting, to avoid crowds, and also maintain hygiene. We want to thank our partners who have extended hand-washing facilities into these refugee camps, because this will go a long way in controlling or just ensuring that we do not have cases of COVID-19 in the refugee camps.
At KBC Channel 1 at Serfine_Achieng. That is where you can interact with us on social media. Remember, we are also streaming this online on Facebook and via our YouTube platform. In case you cannot be able to stay in the house, then carry us along with you. I promise it's a comprehensive program that is going to be talking about issues that touch on you and I. And in studio this particular morning, I'm hosting Honorable Oku Kaunya. He's the Member of Parliament for Teso North in Busia County. We'll be talking about a lot. Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa, for creating time for us this morning.
Most welcome.
All right, so it's good to have you right now when the country is facing quite a number of big challenges, if you may ask me. The first one being the flooding situation. Your county and the neighboring Kakamega County and several other counties, amounting to over 20 counties, have been affected adversely by the flooding situation. The other day, the devolution CS, Eugene Wamalwa, was in Murang'a County, and part of what he was saying as the situation at hand is that about 800 households have since been affected. Mheshimiwa, I don't know from your backyard, if you look at what is happening, how do you paint the picture for us? What is the current status as we speak?
Thank you very much, Serfine. I would like to, first of all, I think to agree that the current situation that this country faces is a situation where we have two very serious disasters, the disaster of floods and the disaster of COVID-19. Now, with respect to the floods, my constituency, Teso North, has been one of those that has been heavily affected by floods. More than 1,500 households have been affected. Largely, there are also some cases of deaths, which partly also coming with the rain. We had also lightning, which has caused at least 2 deaths. At the same time, the floods have, a number of lives have been lost. Several of them have lost houses, have actually collapsed. Some are already admitted in hospitals because the houses collapsed on them. And indeed, for Busia County, we are heavily affected, more so Budalangi, which is a perennial problem, but this time around, the floods have really wreaked havoc, more havoc even in Budalangi. More than 3/4 of the constituency is in water, and people are displaced, more than 2,600 households. So basically, in terms of the response, we see the response not being adequate. More so in terms of having these families settle, have a life where they're settled, because most of them have been displaced from their houses. So we do not have that support that is required for food, for shelter, and for even clothing where necessary.
All right, Mheshimiwa, sorry to cut you short. I'll get to that point where we'll be talking about the level of response and what has been done and how much ground still needs to be covered later. But something interesting you've talked about there is that this is something that has been perennial in major areas, in particularly your county. You've cited Budalangi constituency. Why do you think we keep getting to this point? And are there measures probably that we can be able to take to make sure that at least, if not completely avert the flooding situation, but then it's contained? Because from what you're describing is that this time around, it is even worse than what has been experienced before.
Yeah, exactly. I think some of the factors, from the way I look at it, is that we are used to reactive actions rather than proactive. We don't take time to plan. And I think there has not been a substantive plan to deal with the floods in the country. There has been reactive plans where whenever they occur, we try to intervene and deal with a few of the issues. So I think our major weakness is there has not been that proactive plan. Of course, we usually get warnings, but I think for this particular time, of course, the extent was not anticipated. But even in the past, where we have built dikes, for example, the government has done some dike construction in Budalangi or some affected areas, but they were not done adequately. And in some cases, some places have been washed off. Bridges like Malakisi Bridge has gone. It's not passable. And Zoya Bridge in Western has been affected. Several bridges have been affected, even in Mungachi. There's a small bridge there, it's gone off. Koteko, there's an area called Kokare on the road from my constituency towards Nambale. It's already cut off. So I think we do not have plan, and I think this is the area the government and those departments concerned should be able to have a proactive plan and deliberately put in funds to ensure we manage these floods.
As leaders from the region, you are the ones who are the wearers of the shoe. You are the ones who are representing the interests of these people, and you understand the terrain and the history of those regions and a likelihood of such an occurrence happening every time we're having rains. Have you presented some sort of proposal or anything, just reached out to the organizations that you're pointing out to tell them, this is the problem we are facing in our region, and probably if we did this, then we could avert the agony of the residents? Have you done that, and have those efforts borne any fruit, Mheshimiwa?
Yes, yes, indeed. As leaders, we have done proposals. Again, I would want to say there has not been a concrete one joint proposal, but every leader has tried on their own to present to the various, like I have written for my constituency, to the Ministry of Devolution.
What are the key highlights in terms of the solutions to this particular problem, of the proposals that you're talking about?
One of the key highlights is that in an area called like Akiriamasit, where we have two rivers, River Komiriai, Malaba, and the River Malakisi converge, there has always been flooding. That area, we are now developing, the government is putting up a sewerage system within the locality. But what we have proposed is that alongside developing that and the water system, we should have a drainage, and also we should have banks which are developed to block off the water so that that overflow to the community is minimized. Of course, I've also written for the short-term intervention measures to ask for relief to these people in terms of food, and of course for the houses, a reconstruction which require some material like iron sheets and the like, which I've appealed to the Ministry of Devolution. But looking at the Kenyan situation, I'm a member of the National Administration and Security Committee, and we had a meeting last week on Thursday, where we summoned, we invited the National Disaster Operation Unit to come and highlight on what actions are being taken. What I see, and we did not as a committee, is there isn't a concurrent, there isn't a coherent or organized system. Whereas we have an interagency response, which calls for all the various agencies to come. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the planning is still short of that long-term planning, long-term solutions. We are still on that reactive. So I think we have this week also on Thursday, tomorrow, we've called other stakeholders to look at, to see where the gaps in terms of the law, in terms of the operation, in terms of planning, so that we can, from the parliamentary perspective, mm-hmm. we can see what parts of the law can be strengthened to ensure that disaster management is mainstreamed. Of course, we are currently working on a bill which is to try and harmonize how to deal with disasters in the country, particularly given the fact that we had the Constitution 2010 and given the fact that we had the devolution, we have to then establish the roles that the devolved functions can do and the national government. Mm-hmm. Of course, disasters essentially, a national disaster is a national government, essentially a national government function. Okay. But there are areas that, like now, the case of Marakwet, where you have the mudslides, for example. Mm-hmm. It may go beyond the ability of a particular county to manage. So that's why we are working on a law to try and harmonize so that we know the roles that will be played by the county and the roles by the national government.
I want you to underscore something, and I like how this conversation is the direction it's taking. I want you to underscore what you think is the biggest hurdle when it comes to managing disasters in this country. Yes, you've talked about us being more reactive as opposed to being proactive when it comes to solving such crises, but as you go to the relevant authorities, the organizations, the stakeholders with such proposals like what you were sharing with us earlier, what are they telling you in terms of what could be stopping them from acting on what you're presenting as solutions? What are some of the gaps probably that you think are still there in managing disasters in this country?
Managing disasters, I think one of the areas that is very key, which has not been addressed, is the question of the command. In the sense, I'm using the word command in the sense that in terms of disciplined units or forces, there has to be a command arrangement where you have every other organization revert to for direction. Ideally, of course, we are guided by the Constitution. The President is the one to declare this is a national disaster. But when it comes to the operational command, we have a lot of disjointed action. Disjointed in the sense that we have several units that seem to be doing or organizing response. I will give you an example. Currently, we have the Ministry of Devolution. But you can see that the Ministry of Devolution alone cannot manage this. When you look at even the disaster of Corona, the pandemic. The Ministry of Health alone can't. So it requires a lot of interagency, but again with very clear command arrangement. I think that is one area. And with that, of course, every other organization should be linked to this managerial unit that can be able to help us direct the resources and direct all our energies to dealing with the disaster.
And that multi-agency approach has worked before in other areas. We have seen it work, and that is what you're proposing this morning. But then I also want to know whether in your interaction with this nature of issues, have you seen anything to the effect of dealing with the specific challenges an area faces? Like when it comes to disaster management, are there any measures that have been put in place to make sure that any effort or strategy that is put in place is tailored to meet the specific needs of that particular region? Because yes, we have areas facing floods, there are areas affected by probably issues to do with drought. Every area has its own unique challenges. In disaster management, do we have any intention or anything that has been done to that effect to make sure that every area is catered for depending on what they could be going through?
That is the other area where perhaps we have not put in place area-specific area-specific structures to deal with the disasters. For example, we know for sure that in Kisumu, the Kano area, Nyando area, does have floods from time to time.
Yes.
In Busia County, Budalangi, yes, it's always there.
Yes.
But I think we haven't put specific arrangements to deal with those disasters. And I think this is the area where the county governments could play a bigger role in terms of identifying and in terms of working with the national government, so that those units of operation, for example, units that will respond to those disasters as and when they occur, they are within accessibility and they are able to react faster. I think that's a very key area.
Yeah, and also, as all this is happening, I would say at the top, let's look at the bottom. And these are the people who fall victim to such tragedies. Right now, we shared with our viewers, and this is something that is in the public domain, that about 800 households, even over 800 households have been affected. When we talk about the casualties, over 200 people, the number keeps rising because this crisis is just something that keeps getting worse by the day. When you do your rounds, when you interact with the residents, do they give you a feeling of people who are ready to cooperate with even the warnings that are issued when they're told to move to higher grounds, when they're told to do ABCD, so that at least they prevent themselves from becoming, being victimized by this crisis? Are they willing? Do they know that they should do that, or circumstances may hinder them from doing that? Where do you stand on that matter?
The issue is that I think basically the public, the general public, may not appreciate or may not understand, whereas they know the dangers,
yes,
and sometimes they are given warnings to move to higher grounds. They do not normally respond as such until something has happened. The thing is, I think we need both education, and also we need to identify areas where these people can be vacated.
So is it ignorance? Is it mere defiance, or is it lack of an option?
It is, I would think it is both. One is, I would see an area, I think in Kenya, for example, we tend to look at land as tied to private property to individuals. But the tendency is that if you have, and then of course, we really value our homes, to the extent that somebody waits until the level of water goes so high and is threatening, is when they start picking their things to go. So I think there is a lot that we need to do on education, because obviously there is that ignorance aspect. But there is also a need to go to have a deliberate action where we find a situation that we know these floods are coming and these rains are going to be very heavy, we should deliberately, as a government, relocate these people to higher grounds.
Mm-hmm. So sort of like forceful, taking a forceful direction in making sure they are there to these warnings, or you just leave them to do it voluntarily?
Whereas you would want to educate them,
yes,
but where they are not acting, I think it's the responsibility of government to safeguard life. So, and we see the danger of losing more people. So we must take action. And that is what has happened even with the current COVID, really. Mm-hmm. The interventions, people are advised to do what they are supposed to do to ensure that we enhance our safety. But when they go beyond, there has to be rules and laws that have to be applied.
Mm-hmm. Reports from the weatherman still indicate that we are going to be experiencing uncertain weather patterns in the coming days, heavy rainfall, and this situation seems to be will take longer than many people would think. So you speak their language, you've lived among them, you interact with them, Mheshimiwa. What is it that you're doing, especially in your locality, to ensure that you avert any possible danger or destruction of property? Are you in touch with what is happening in the ground, and what are you doing as efforts as a leader in that region to make sure that your people are safe?
One of the things that we've tried to do, like in my constituency, is that apart from appealing to agencies that can come and intervene and help, we have also gone on sensitizing our people, sensitizing them. For example, I've been to visit some villages. I've also visited some homes where people are affected. I've had to sensitize the families not to stay where there's already danger. You find a house, probably the water is, because of the nature of the houses there, are built with soil, loose soil. So because the water, when it reaches a certain level, the house just collapses. So we have sensitized the public when there's such danger to move out of that house and not to live there and move to some neighbors or whatever where the houses are a bit more stable. So part of that sensitization is ongoing, and we are of course combining with the current other pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Earlier, let me now take you back to what you had taken us to, the level of response. And from where you're coming, you were saying that the response has not been quite adequate. What did you really mean with the statement? What has been done? And probably what did you expect that ought to have been done to the victims of the floods?
Yes, one of the things that I see, the response is not adequate. For example, I know that 2 weeks ago, the Minister for Devolution sent some 500 bags of rice, food to those who are affected in the area. And of course, the amount of rice that was sent wasn't, of course, adequate, given that we are looking at over 1,000 households affected. Apart from that, of course, many of them are affected in the sense they don't have, their dwellings have collapsed. So we need other assistance, other non-food items, like we need the mabatis, that is the iron sheets for make the houses where they can stay. We need maybe beddings or such things to help them. So I think the amount of help is not adequate, though we appreciate the government at least for the step for what they have given. But I think more food is required, and more of those non-food items.
All right. So still, we have received reports that at least for now, 1.3 billion shillings have been spent in just mitigating the effects of the flooding situation. If you look at, that figure, would you say it is really tallying with efforts that have been put in place right now as we speak?
Yes, I think in terms of the food that has been distributed, probably there are no other really very heavy interventions. I think 1 billion or 1.3 looks reasonable considering that the whole country has been affected. Though I do not particularly know which other counties, but I know every sub-county, most sub-counties in Western, received 500 bags of rice. So I should think, look, considering it's the whole country, 1.3 billion for food items for relief, I think looks reasonable in my view, but it is not adequate.
All right. Mheshimiwa, from your view, how bad is the humanitarian crisis? What is the worst, even if you can single out one case of a victim that you interacted with, for us to understand the magnitude of this problem? How bad is it?
The situation is really very, very bad. I interacted, for example, with one old lady. She's in her 70s. The house collapsed on her in Changara location of Teso North. And she was hospitalized. She was admitted at Kocholia Hospital. And when you look at the situation, it is dire because she had only the only house which collapsed. She doesn't have anything else. And so I had to go ahead and even support in terms of medical support. She was still undergoing treatment. But definitely for her to recover, even after recovery from hospital, she needs a place to stay. The situation is dire, and there are many families that have been affected in that regard.
And I know that this is coming at a time when this country has been through a lot. It's just the other day we experienced the locust invasion, which is still ongoing, by the way. And now we're in the wake of the outbreak of coronavirus. Mheshimiwa, how has this affected the residents in terms of even the efforts to flatten the curve when it comes to coronavirus, and they are here dealing with floods? How is the situation and the tricky balance when you see it?
Yeah, I think the pandemic has made the situation worse, especially with these floods, and of course we are in a crossroads in terms of, as a country, where we are faced with all these disasters, so to say. What now is the problem? With the floods, the next point is that there will be an outbreak of diseases if we don't protect these people, if they don't live in habitable areas. The waters have been contaminated because of all this flood, and most of them are relying on that water from the rivers, from the surrounding, where, since there's no clean water. Like in my constituency, 95% do not get tap water or clean water. So that they rely on that water, flood water or river water. Therefore, there's a threat even of an outbreak of diseases related to the waterborne diseases. Now, but when I look at the question of now with the corona, it's worse off in my situation, especially my constituency, Teso North, where Malaba border post is located. The Malaba border post handles the biggest amount of traffic of trailers that carry goods, and the most, in fact, in Kenya, that go across our borders to Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Eastern DRC, and South Sudan. Now, as we speak, by yesterday, the trailers formed a queue of 40 kilometers up to Bungoma, that is Kandui. Now, these trailers are taking more than 2-3 days to be cleared. The reason is that on the Ugandan side, they are very strict. They cross and they are checked, they are all tested. And in fact, because of that, we have a big danger of the drivers who are untested, and most of them are not tested even as they enter Busia County in Malaba or Busia. They are not tested. Even checking the temperature is only 1 week ago that a thermometer was brought for all this time when we have this danger. So what happens is that there's a lot of danger from the truck drivers who have to buy food locally, they have to take accommodation locally, and the local hawkers sell bananas and oblivious of what is happening. So I think this is one area where we have asked the Ministry of Health and other ministries concerned to step up. I've actually requested, and I did put in a statement in Parliament on the dangers that are there, and requesting that a testing and isolation center be established at Malaba. And the testing of these truck drivers should be made mandatory before they depart Mombasa. And even those who are coming from those neighboring countries must be tested. Currently, the last 1 week from Sunday, we had about 5 truck drivers returned from Uganda who were tested positive. Yeah. They were brought to Malaba and they have been relocated to Alupe, where there's an isolation area. The following day, that's on Monday, we had 3. As we speak today, we have another 3, and yesterday there were 2. So you see the numbers that are there detected on Uganda are many. They tell us what is really happening this side. And something to note, the East African Protocol on the one-stop shop requires that all trucks that leave Mombasa can only be cleared on the other neighboring country in Uganda. Unfortunately, even this COVID, the same has been applied. That trailers come all the way from Mombasa, they go through on this side of Malaba, or even across to the border with Bungoma. They are not checked because of the rule.
That is what you're saying is putting,
that is putting the residents, to great danger.
So how do you propose this is solved?
One of the things that I propose is that all drivers must be tested. If they are COVID positive, they should be put aside. Those who are really tested and have certificates to show, then those are the ones who should drive the trucks going through. They should then be also a testing center at the entry to Malaba on this side, as opposed to currently the situation. And then the government should also help the residents by ensuring that they are protected, give like masks and whatever. I have tried at the local level to give a few masks along the road, especially those traders, the hawkers, the mamambogas who are selling around nearby the road, to protect them. But a lot of education along that area and a lot of protective gear needs, and also for the officers, the police officers, the health officers, and the like.
All right.
So I think action needs to be taken, and sooner than later. If not, the other possible option is to stop all trailers from going through the border for at least 1 month while they are doing the testing and everything. That will remove this danger.
Yeah. What you're proposing, I don't know how practical it will be, because already we are having a disagreement between Kenya and Tanzania when it comes to, the closure of the border. There has been a lot of sentiments that have been shared following what happened. On Saturday, President Uhuru Kenyatta directed that the Kenya-Somali and the Kenya-Tanzania border be closed except for those who are ferrying essential goods. And this seemed not to have gone too well, because on Monday, Tanzania announced a ban on Kenyan truck drivers and who are entering its territories. Of course, it's something that has really attracted a lot of reactions. We saw the Tanga Regional Commissioner, this is Martin Singela, who said that closing of the border was aimed at stopping coronavirus infections. But a lot of people read malice in his statement, especially when it sort of alluded that Kenya could be playing a part in the spread of the virus in Tanzania. And it's something that has not gone well, but the Tanzania government, through its health ministry, has tried to really clarify why this move was taken. And it's still a story that is taking different twists and turns. But what we see, and what is no longer a secret, is that every country is trying to put the interest of their people at the front and making sure that their people are protected. But by some of the measures being taken, do not seem to be going too well with our neighbors and even ourselves and even the Kenyans themselves within. I don't know what you read from these cross-border disputes when it comes to handling COVID-19, Mheshimiwa.
My take on this is that the cross-border issues, especially affecting East African countries, require, first an East African approach. But considering that the East African approach has not been forthcoming in terms of agreeing to measures that are more or less standard. For example, Uganda ordered the border closed. Uganda's border, you cannot move from Kenya. You cannot move from the other side. For quite a while now, more than 2 months, 3 months now. Kenya, we have not closed. So what happens is that if we had a standard, we said there's no movement of vehicles, then we should all agree on the same. That's one line. But the second line, I think, which I do agree, and I think our president is right, in the sense that we must protect our people. That's first. And every country would want to protect its people. And that is the main reason I'm saying, even with these truck drivers, we should stop if they are posing a danger to our people. Close off those truck drivers that we think are a threat. Our own, let's have them checked and tested. Then we deal with these cases which we can manage. In my view, of course, there are some statements that are associated with the neighboring countries, like in the case of Tanzania. Mm-hmm. I don't think that is in the spirit of good neighborliness of East Africans. That we should not encourage that kind of, there should be that cooperation that's encouraged. But every country, if in the event that we are not seeing the same protective measures being carried out in Tanzania, as we would expect, and if we see there's that danger, just like the aircrafts or aeroplanes that have been grounded, we should ground those kind of movements. That's my view.
Is this likely to have, implications on the trade relations that we have been enjoying in the region? Because we are looking at this in terms of just beyond COVID-19. We have made quite a good friendship with our neighbors in East Africa, and this friendship has really brought us good results, especially when it comes to matters trade. If we do not come to a compromise in this COVID-19 situation, is it likely to affect all this good relationship that we have been enjoying in the past?
Yes, it is true in the short run, and of course in the long run it could affect the good relationships. That is very, very true, because we need to cultivate that. And that is why a joint kind of action, uniform action on either side is important. But as it is now, we have Uganda returning Kenyan drivers that are COVID positive. They don't want to deal with that. That is our responsibility. We have Tanzania blocking off. We have ourselves returning those from Tanzania who have been tested. I think that does not build a good relationship in East Africa. What we need is our heads of state to put their heads together and come up with a joint approach that can help protect the residents of East Africa and protect each country, and without necessarily harming the business relationships in the future.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that. But then now let's shift gears. We were talking about the flooding situation earlier, and in a bit, of course, we'll also be joined by another panelist. This is Honorable Mwalo Joshua Mbithi. He's the Member of Parliament for Masiga constituency in Machakos County. As we talk about the state of the nation, right now we are dealing with a lot in the country. I told you that there is a flooding situation. I told you there is also the coronavirus pandemic and a bit of politics that we have been served in the few days that the Jubilee party has attracted quite a lot of attention. But then I want to get to understand more about our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Before I bring in Mheshimiwa Mbithi, I want to talk to Mheshimiwa that I was engaging earlier, Eko. Tell me a bit about, if you look at what has been done since we reported the first case of coronavirus in February, and how the response committee has been very consistent in giving information each and every day, and for us to stay updated on how far we are when it comes to the spread of COVID-19. Each and everything that the government has done, how would you rate the response on COVID-19?
Thank you. I think, in my view, the response right from the beginning, to me, I think His Excellency the President led the response, and I want to really commend His Excellency the President and, of course, the Minister of Health, especially the Minister for Health. One of the things that happened in our case is that the action that was taken to take this very seriously at national level, that response was very, very key, especially when it came to that level of reaction. Now, when it comes to the actions that have been taken, I think the question of the curfews, night curfews, I think were important to control those. And of course, the control of certain areas that were found to be epicenters, or areas where there was a lot of cases, like the case of Nairobi, Mombasa, and the like. The recent one, of course, zeroing in on particular estates, like the old town in Mombasa, and zeroing in on Isli, Nairobi, where the cases were moving too fast. So I think it's commendable so far, and I also want to commend that really the extension of the curfew, whereas the public and the people want to get to business, there are a lot of those who have been affected, they have no jobs, there's a lot of effect. But I think in the long run, when you look at the rationale of curfews and the rationale for these controls, it will help us deal with this pandemic. And I think the public should really give support to that, even as we appeal to the government to really support the vulnerable people, vulnerable groups, those who have lost jobs, those who have no other means of earning at this time of the pandemic.
All right.
I think the only thing I would want to point out, the updates that are given by the ministry are welcome, and they have been quite every day at the right time updating the Kenyans. This is very commendable. The problem that I see is that the issue of planning again in advance, and also identifying the specific areas that are likely to be epicenters. There has not been action on that area, commensurate action. Just giving the example of my constituency. On 24th of March, I did write to the minister on highlighting the danger of that area. Of course, the border areas, Namanga and the like, the dangers could be read. The airports, because this virus came to us through our ports of entry. The reaction, said in Jomo Kenyatta, we took a little late to close it, if we closed early. So I think even now as we speak, there are border areas like that Malaba, whereas we are reacting to Namanga because they have the area has been checked. There is need to go and test the residents of that area, Malaba, for example, and the other ports of entry, so that we are able to act in advance. But we take too long, then when it blows out is when we act. I think that is where I would wish to appeal to the ministry and the minister concerned to really take action, and even the other ministries who are concerned with the management of this in terms of its security aspect should really come in.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Talking about testing, one of the things that we are following up for you this particular morning is also an exercise that is today underway in Isili Estate right here in Nairobi. There's going to be free targeted mass testing in Isili area. This is happening at 3 venues. This is something that is voluntary and you're encouraged to be part of it at St. Teresa's Boys Secondary School. It is also happening at New Isili Primary School and at Zawadi Primary School. So residents of this particular area are encouraged to turn up, because it is only after testing that we can really know the true picture of the spread of coronavirus in our country. It's an exercise that the Ministry of Health has really been very keen on, the free targeted mass testing that has been going on in areas especially that have been termed as coronavirus hotspots, not just in Nairobi, but also in other counties as well. We are also following up on an event currently today happening, that is the partnership between the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights and the European Union, that are just seeking to enhance the enjoyment of human rights during and even after the COVID-19 global pandemic. And of course, our reporters are also on top of what is happening between the Nairobi Metropolitan Service, that is partnering with the Nairobi Central Business District Association to launch sanitization booths at Mbagathi Hospital. So anytime we'll be taking you to these events and others that we are tracking this particular morning to ensure that you stay updated. Remember, today it is Wednesday, and for some time now, what we have been doing is the Sasita campaign. The Sasita campaign, if you do not know, is actually something that began to just applaud our health workers who are in the front line in fighting the coronavirus global pandemic. Let me just check my time. It's exactly 9 minutes past 11, and this means that it's under 1 hour, and that will be happening just to make sure that wherever you are, you take time, clap for the healthcare workers who are staying in the front line in the fight against COVID-19. As we run away from trouble, they go towards trouble to ensure that they save lives, working under unique conditions, exposing themselves to the risk of contracting COVID-19 just to make sure that others do not become part of the statistic. Right now in our country, we've reported cases beyond the 900 mark, the positive cases of COVID-19 that have been confirmed within our borders since the first case was reported. Allow me now bring in my other guest in the show. This is Honorable Joshua Mwalio Mbithi. He's the Member of Parliament for Masinga constituency in Machakos County. Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa, for creating time for us this morning.
Thank you.
I want you to just jump into the conversation. We were talking about the coronavirus global pandemic. And, you know, you've seen how the curve has been taking an interesting shape over the recent days. We began by just reporting a few cases, 2 cases, 4 cases, 16. And right now we went to as high as over 50 cases in a day. Did you see, what do you read from this?
Thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. The coronavirus pandemic, which has been a problem in this country, has really bothered everybody, and has meant our economy even to go down, jobs to be cut, and we are not doing very, very well in terms of the spread, because the number seems to be going up. It means the more we test, the more we get the affected people in this country. So the government efforts is very much welcome, because the government is trying to do the best to be able to control this pandemic, and also to see who are sick among ourselves, so that they can be isolated and also taken to the hospital to be treated. Therefore, we really congratulate the Minister of Health. Together with his team, they are doing a good job. And we wish them to continue and make more efforts. And if we can get more people tested in the country, then we can be able to know who are affected and who are not affected.
All right, thank you so much for that. Now, leaving aside the numbers and how we are doing in terms of the curve, we want to talk about the impact of this particular virus. It's no longer a secret how much it has changed lives as Kenyans are trying, and even people worldwide trying to adjust to this new normal. Yesterday, there was this report that was released by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. It was presented to the CS Treasury Kuriatani. It paints a picture on the socio-economic impact of COVID-19 on the lives of Kenyans. I'd just like to bring us up to speed with some highlights of this report, and then we can get to discuss probably what could be the best way forward in cushioning Kenyans who have been affected adversely by the coronavirus pandemic. When you're talking about, it was looking at areas to do with labor force. It was also sought to find out if there has been any changes in terms of the cost of transport in the country, and also the number of people in the country who could be having pre-existing conditions. Remember, they are more at risk when it comes to contracting COVID-19. The level of awareness about this virus, and of course how it has also impacted the education sector. What really stood out for me was the labor force and the ability of Kenyans to pay rent and the transport. And this is what I want us to focus on. And the survey actually says that almost half of the respondents who were absent from work said that it was because of the lockout or stay away instructions as guided by the government and their employers. And 9 out of 10, this amounts to about 91.2% of those who are absent from work. They say that they were not sure when they will be returning to that particular, their position. So we will be, talking about this in a bit. We are going to be taking a very short break right here on Newscheck. We are coming back with more.
What's up, everybody? Mambo Whippy. This is Gladson Peter, aka One Man Band India. Catch me live from India on the Good Morning Kenya show, aka GMK, this Thursday morning from 9 a.m.
Hapo basi nyinyi ndio mwanamke mnavokosea. Young man, you are way out of line.
Are you on her side ama are you with us?
Sikuelewa teacher akifunza mambo ya photosynthesis na pollination.
Hiyo ni siara ya manini?
Hakuna.
Nilikuwa nimenunua shopping kaja nayo jana hapa.
Sahi wasana ununua vitu zingine. Kuna hasara hapo.
Hata uwezi kuizi na matajiri hata kidogo.
Uncle Job alisema atafunga nyumba.
Mudhe, tafadhali tu nipatie tu dakika moja. Mimi Job unakula chakula ya watoto seriously.
Tiffany must not leave the country.
Aisha pango.
I think we should leave.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for creating time for us and for staying with us. We now want to cross over to Mombasa County. We link up with Michael Mwadiga just to bring us up to speed with what is happening with regards to how the region is currently mitigating the spread of coronavirus. It's one of the counties that are really at the forefront when it comes to the cases that continue surging each and every day. Mwadiga, a very good morning. If you can hear me, kindly bring us up to speed with what you have for us. What are some of the efforts that have been put in place this particular morning?
Serfine Achieng, assalamu alaikum. I'm coming to you live from Mombasa Hospital, whereas the Rotary Club in Mombasa is today awarding the nurses, these are the frontline soldiers in the fight of COVID-19. They are rewarding them with certificates and, of course, give them some tokens of food, at least as a way of appreciating them. And as it is a norm, every Wednesday at exactly 12 noon is time, we clap for our frontline soldiers in what they're doing in fighting COVID-19 and, of course, flattening the curve. And today, this morning, we are at Mombasa Hospital, whereby the Rotary Club is carrying out this activity. And I'm joined by the officials from the Rotary Club who will tell us briefly their names and their position and why they decided to pick Mombasa Hospital on this particular event today. And welcome, sir, starting with the chairman. Welcome, sir. What's your name and what about today's event?
My name is Hanif Parkar. I'm the president of the Rotary Club of Mombasa. And as you rightly pointed out, as I heard you saying, we as a club decided that it is very important that we take care of the frontline staff in hospitals. We picked up on Mombasa Hospital, we being a Rotary Club in Mombasa, because we recognize the efforts that the staff or the frontline staff are putting in. As you have rightly pointed out, the staff are frontline soldiers. These are very, very difficult times, and there is a lot of sacrifice that has been put in by the staff. So as the Rotary Club of Mombasa, we decided to give something small in terms of food packs to the frontline staff as a form of motivation and to ensure that they get motivated to serve us. I would just urge the staff that what they are doing is a very, very noble cause. Their jobs may be seen as a job, but to me, I think they are actually contributing a lot to community. I would look at it as a job that is actually a charity. So they should be. They are very blessed actually to be in this sort of careers, and we wish and hope and wish them the best. Apart from the Rotary Club of Mombasa, we have also got together with the Mamuji Foundation and the Sir Yusuf Trust, who assisted us with contributions apart from the Rotary Club to ensure that we make a success of today's function. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. And here we have, come closer, please. This is Dr. Charia. Dr. Charia, welcome on board and tell us what about today's function and what are you planning for these people?
Thank you very much. Basically, as the Rotary members of the Rotary Club of Mombasa, we want to recognize, we want to appreciate, we want to thank, and we want to celebrate the work that is being done by the frontline health workers. If you are looking for mashujas, you don't have to look far. Here are the mashujas, the real mashujas, who are putting their lives at risk, the lives of their families at risk, so that we may live, so that we are safe, so that our families are safe. These are the silent mashujas of this country. And we as Rotarians want to thank them. And we are also very grateful to Mombasa Hospital, to the management of Mombasa Hospital, for having given us this opportunity to appreciate the hard work that they are putting in. We have to learn from them the dedication, the sacrifice, the resilience they exhibit. And let us pray that may God give them long life so that they can continue their noble work. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. And here we also have Mr. Abdul Samji, who is also, I may say, a person of interest in the fight of COVID-19 in Mombasa. Welcome, Mr. Samji. Please come closer so that we have this time with you. Okay, tell us in Mombasa so far in the fight of COVID-19, and what's your position in the committee?
Oh, thank you. First of all, let me say I'm wearing two hats today. I am also a Rotarian, as you can see from my shirt, but I also chair the County Emergency Food Relief and Nutrition Program. We are in this fight together. Whatever little can be done, I think goes a long way in trying to alleviate the suffering that the people of Mombasa are going through in this pandemic fight. We as a County Emergency Committee have a big target to fill in terms of food relief, in terms of health, and in terms of providing water. But we cannot do it alone. We have to rely on support not only from the county, which has given us 200 million shillings, but from the private sector. And today I'm witnessing a part of the private sector coming forward, Rotary clubs, Mamuji Foundation, Yusuf Ali Trust, and yesterday we had Diamond Trust Bank, before we had the Rotary Club again, the University of Nairobi. So I would like to appeal very profusely to the private sector. Please come forward, do whatever you can, even if it's in a small manner, to see how you can support not only our program, but the people on the front line who are suffering or who are risking their lives. As you know, we just started the COVID-19 patients ward at the Technical University of Mombasa. I can say already we have 65 patients at that hospital. Our capacity was 72 beds. We are now trying to increase the capacity to 300 beds. So we will need more funding in terms of beds, mattresses, oxygen, monitors, and plus the daily supplies which the patients require. As you know, the patients are treated for free at the tombs. So I would like to appeal to the private sector. Please come forward and help us. I would like to thank the Rotary Club of Mombasa again, and the two foundations and the trustees who have supported this particular cause. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Of course, that is Mr. Abdul Samji. As I told you earlier on, he's a person of interest in this fight against COVID-19. And in the meanwhile, as it stands now, in Mombasa County, we have 331 cases tested of COVID-19, including 27 fatalities. Of course, it's a big number, and it is for people to ensure that they take the precautions as stated and directives from the Ministry of Health, that is putting on a mask, sanitizing, washing your hands. It is something which was reiterated yesterday by the County Commissioner, Mr. Gilbert Kitio, who said that it is time for us to ensure that we follow the due procedures so that we may not suffer. It is time so that we flatten the curve. His comments, or his sentiments rather, were echoed by Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho, who said that the fight is, the magic in this fight of COVID-19 is just testing, isolation and treatment to ensure that we flatten the curve. That's what we have for now from Mombasa County in about maybe 35 minutes time. Of course, we will be standing by and clapping for our frontline foot soldiers in this fight of COVID-19. I am Michael Mondiga coming to you live from Mombasa County.
Thank you, Michael, for that. Appreciating efforts being put in place to really just applaud our frontline soldiers in the fight against COVID-19. It's actually some 33 minutes to 12. That is when the Sasita campaign will be happening. Wherever you are, just stand and clap it's not enough, yes, I know, but it's just a way of, a symbol of showing that you really appreciate and understand the sufferings of the healthcare workers at this particular time. It's something that happens each and every Wednesday, just to appreciate them in what they are doing to flatten the curve and to help those who have been victims of the coronavirus and even the suspected cases. Now, back to my conversation with my panelists this morning. I'm having a panel of two waheshimiwas. This is Honorable Oku Kaunya. He's the Member of Parliament, Teso North, and Honorable Joshua Mwalio Mbithi. He is the Member of Parliament, Masinga constituency. Thank you so much for creating time for us. Now we continue. Before we went to that link in Mombasa County, I wanted us to talk about this socio-economic impact of coronavirus on the residents of this particular country. And I borrowed this from one of the surveys that was released by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, just that paints a picture on how bad the situation could be like. About 15,000 people responded to this survey. And this is something that shows that 43.2%, this is actually almost half of those who responded to the survey, were not in any labor force at this particular time when the survey was being conducted. And when you look at, the expenses like payment of rent, nationally 30.5% of the households were unable to pay rent at the agreed time with their landlords. And the reasons they cited, 52.9% said reduced income or earnings was the main reason for inability for households to pay rent. Gentlemen, this is painting a picture of the plight of what Kenyans are going through at this particular time. I don't know from where you sit what you'd share in terms of how hard this coronavirus pandemic has hit us as a country. I'll start with you, Mheshimiwa Mbithi.
Yeah, I must say that the pandemic has hit Kenyans very hard, and especially the medium-sized establishments and businesses, because what they did is that they gave their workers unpaid leaves. And when you give an employee unpaid leave, it means that you are not able to continue with paying their salaries. And therefore, the workers are unable to pay their rents, they are unable to put food on their tables. And then it came the issue of lockdown, whereby Nairobi was locked. So they cannot go up country whereby there is food in terms of maize and the beans where they can eat for free at home. And they are locked here without food, without rent, without money, without salary. So it is a very difficult situation that the governments need to look into. And Kenyans are suffering. Like ourselves who are members of parliament, the kind of calls we get per day of our voters saying that their houses have been locked, help me in a small way. Yesterday we slept without food. We get some SMSs, and you cannot be able to sustain all those people because you don't also have enough. So it is really hard times, and I think the government needs to come with a better formula of how the people can go back to work, even if they are going back to work in shifts. If you have a workers force of 20 people, you can say that a few come on Monday for 2 days, others come on Wednesday for 2 days, so that they can get something, even if it's half salary, so that they can be able to sustain themselves, to sustain their families, to pay their rent, and also to have life to continue.
All right.
So otherwise it is going to be very difficult. By the time the coronavirus is over, then many will go under, because the owners of the companies also service some loans that are in some financial institutions, which they keep them going for their cash flow.
All right.
Therefore, it is very hard, and things are not very easy.
Thank you. Sorry to cut you short. I'll be engaging you more on what that strategy is that will work for both the employers and the employees, just for generally all Kenyans to be able to feel like they are at least at ease in this particular pandemic, because you're part of the leaders in that government you're calling out. So I'll be asking you as government to tell us what government needs to do to cushion Kenyans. But then let me bring in Mheshimiwa Oku. You know, it's been almost 2 months we've been under partial lockdown in some parts of the country. How long can we sustain this, and probably how bad can the situation get, looking at how far we have come? And already we are crying. The economy is tough. People have lost their jobs. There's just a lot. And we've had even cases of some who are already suffering from depression as a result of just so much issues going on right now. How long can we sustain this?
Yes, I think we have had quite a big impact. And the larger impact is both social and economic. When we look at cases where we're looking at the economy, as my colleague has indicated, really employment, many of the mid-level have suffered unemployment because the enterprises had to close. But again, the lower level, especially the Juakali sector. Juakali in terms of its general level. Mama mbogas in the cities, for example. I saw one mama complaining. She used to sell a lot of fish. And within the short time that these things have taken, the corona has taken us through, there was no market. She lost out, so she has no earning, and that is where she was relying on. In terms of even education, there is a big impact, both social and economic. Our youths are there at home. They are really doing nothing. In terms of, as a country, even though the Ministry of Education has come up with the idea of online, the reality is that majority, more than 70% of Kenyans are still in those rural areas where they can't access even television, for example, or even computers or internet. So I think the impact has been dire for Kenyans, and I think quite a number of strategies will need to be applied by both government and even the private sector, like we have seen in other countries. The very heavy or bigger enterprises who could absorb some of this impact could pay some of their workers part salary to ensure at least they sustain their rents and the basic living.
True. That is really necessary, because right now the common phrase has been acha corona ishe tutaangalia hiyo maneno. You know, like everything is at a standstill. There is nothing that can go on right now until this whole crisis is over. And it's really unfortunate because we do not know when this is going to be over or how it's going to be over. So it is really leaving people in a state of limbo. Let's talk about some of these interventions. President Uhuru Kenyatta just recently assented to the Tax Laws Amendment Bill of 2020. Now this actually just exempted those earning less than 28,000 from paying tax, and those earning above 28,000 will be got a reduction in their pay as you earn from between 30 to 25%. A step in the right direction. Mheshimiwa Mwalio, what do you think about this new bill?
It is a good thing that he had to do that, and the law was passed by Parliament and it was signed. But now those people who earn the 24,000 shillings are at home. How are they going to earn that money to help them? Because the businesses have been closed. So it is a good gesture, but if only there's a formula to open up those businesses so that they can be able to earn that amount, because they are already at home. How will they earn the 24,000 shillings? And it's a good move, but more needs to be done. Formulas needs to be done so that we can be able to see how to cushion the Kenyans because they are suffering.
Given an option, given that opportunity to offer a solution, considering the dilemma that we all are in right now, look at the side of the employer, look at the side of the employees. The employer say, I cannot keep you when I cannot pay you. The economy is tough, there are no clients. If it is a shop, nobody is buying, so how do I pay you? The employee needs a job, they need a salary at the end of the day to be able to pay their rent. How do you reach a compromise in such a dilemma?
Let me give you an example of myself. Before I went to politics, I was running a business and still run the business. And what I did, I had to cut the salaries of my staff I actually cut 10%. But later on, when I found that this corona is not going anywhere, I recalled my employees to work so that they can be able to earn something. But also what they need to do is, what I have done is that they must have masks, they must have social distances, they must be few. So some come, the way I was telling you before, some come for 2 days and then go, others come. That is the solution. That because I am not seeing the corona going, because every day as we test people, it is still continuing. And as people have said, and as the Dr. Mwangangi said the other day, corona is here with us to stay. So the governments and ourselves as parliamentarians, we need to come up with a solution for the Kenyans so that we can bring them back to work, return to work formula, so that we can be able to sustain them as we fight the pandemic. So to me, it is we open up the economy, but in a small way, by the way of observing the rules that are laid down by the Ministry of Health in a slowly, because to me, we are not doing anything to help the people that have no food. You cannot reach people, the government cannot reach people with the food. Even if you try, they eat for 1 week, the next week they will still demand the food. So it's just a way of trying to give them first aid.
All right,
but that is not the solution.
So you're proposing we come up with a long-term strategy that will help us adjust to this new normal.
Yes.
Mheshimiwa Oku, where do you come in this particular matter? Can we sustain the stipends to the vulnerable families, probably the money that is being issued to those who've lost their jobs, the donations by well-wishers? We've seen quite a number of them being very generous at this particular time, which is commendable. But can we sustain this for long?
I think when it comes to sustaining those donations or support to the vulnerable, it is not sustainable, at least for an economy, a growing economy like ours. Rich countries like America, some European countries are doing it. They are giving salaries, they are giving money, they are posting to their accounts so that the people who are not on the job can be able to sustain themselves. We can't sustain because based on the funds that we have. My proposal would be, in fact, I would agree with my colleague that the question of an organized long-term program on how to work, bearing in mind that rules that are required to avert this pandemic are applied. But at the same time, I think we were sort of, it's not late. It is not late if the government can first start by simply having a short, maybe 1 month, lockdown, complete lockdown. In the process, test all those who may be found and isolate them.
Can we afford that lockdown, Mheshimiwa?
Yes.
You have said yourself we are part of the developing countries. Can we afford even just a 1 week or 2 week total lockdown? Consider those who earn their living on a daily basis.
Considering that we have these interventions the government had indicated, that we can be able to support the vulnerable. We can be able to support those families like in places like Kibera and other areas, in locked down areas. In my view, it is possible and it can work that for a short period, short-term lockdown. Let's suffer for a short while, flatten the curve, and then we open up the businesses and we move to the next level. Because obviously, we are concerned about the economy, we are concerned about the welfare, but we would rather suffer a little and save lives than to continue and normalize. Then we have this thing continuing to spread. So let's reduce it, and it is the best thing to do within the shorter time. But in the long term, that plan of action would be very
So your proposal is let's come up with a sort of a progressive return to normalcy strategy, but after we undergo a total lockdown of a short period of time.
Say 1 month.
Say
a
1
short
month.
period of time, a total lockdown, and then we can now
start returning
progress
to normalcy
from there.
progressively.
We are seeing an example here. In Uganda, I would want to give the East African example because it's more closer to us. The president ordered more or less a lockdown because it was only all transport vehicles are not moving, the matatus, the what. All borders are not carrying anybody. You are not found carrying anybody. The only thing they are allowed to carry is food to pick, and then the food stores were allowed, but of course exercising that control. So people only get the food and it's brought. Now we in that situation need to take care of the vulnerable and take care of these groups that are really affected. They are not able to get anything.
All right.
Something like that.
All right, gentlemen, both of you seem to be agreeing on one issue, that is we need to return to normalcy, though progressively, because we cannot sustain what is happening right now for long. And my question to Mheshimiwa Mwalio is, if we return to normalcy, has coronavirus taught us anything as lasting lessons that we will hold dear in our hearts? Yes, right now we are washing our hands, we are sanitizing, we are maintaining social distance. It's because of the fear, it's because of the information that is there. There are curfews, there are threats that if you break the law, you will be arrested. If you do not have a mask, there is a fine. So people are really trying to obey these directives by the Ministry of Health. If it is opened up, just a small leeway, now let's get back to normal, will we really hold on to these lessons, these values, these gems that have helped us to at least contain the spread of coronavirus, considering the fact that even as they are there, still there are people who are having secret parties, there are still a few culprits, still a few people who are just defying these orders. Do you think we can actually return to normalcy and be okay when it comes to flattening the curve?
Maybe before I go there, I wanted to respond to Mheshimiwa's lockdown. The issue of lockdown is actually the best. The only thing is that the government capacity to test everybody in 1 month. That's where the issue is. Because if the government had the capacity to test everybody in 30 days, then we test all and find all the sick people, take them to the hospital, take them to isolation wards, and then we can be now returned back, we open up and return back to work. That is my response to that. So it is a bit difficult because the government is only able to test 1,600 maximum per day. And they're looking at the population of 45 million people, it will take a while.
So our testing capacity is still wanting?
It's wanting. It's actually wanting. Now, the thing is, if you look in Nairobi now, today, everything is working normal. If you go to River Road, if you go to Kikomba, if you go to Kibera, if you go everywhere in industrial area, people are working up to 3 o'clock. They are almost now back to work. and they are practicing the rules and the regulations that has been laid down by the ministry.
Is it because they really understand the values of doing that, or it's because of the strictness that the Ministry of Health has put in place?
The Kenyans have understood by seeing the way the Americans and the Italians and the Spains are dying. They have really seen that this is not a joke. And as the minister always says, the CS says, that if we treat this pandemic abnormality,
normally it will
hit us hard.
I didn't know how we will go there, but thank you for that.
It will hit us. So
yes.
People have realized that this is real. And the only people that have not realized are the people up country. You give them masks, they don't wear them. They wash them, they keep them at home. They don't wash their hands, they don't keep social distance. I'm talking about my area. So to me, it is dangerous if only the people at the rural areas can understand what kind of pandemic this is, then this country can change. But they have not understood. I don't know how.
So then are we ready to return to normalcy? I take you back to your statement earlier.
Yes.
If you're saying we still do not understand,
you see, normalcy
how serious this is, are we ready to return to
people
normalcy?
People at home, they are doing their business normally. They are going to the farms as usual. But we are talking of Nairobi and the towns that people go to work. These ones should return. Because the people that are staying in their houses now, they have no food. They cannot go home because Nairobi is locked. Those are in Mombasa cannot come out because it's locked. And they have been sacked. Not actually sacked. They have been laid, they have given, unpaid leave. They are staying in their houses, doing nothing. So, to me, either they open up, they go to their homes, up country, because the food is there. But here in the city, there is no food, and there is no access. They can be able to move to their rural homes. So the thing is, people have understood, especially those who live in the cities. But those who live in the rural areas, they are still need a lot of education.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. We are just about to wind up this conversation. I want you to quickly comment on something that is also happening in the country. This is just a comment I want from both of you. The Jubilee party politics that have attracted quite a lot of attention. Just the other day, we saw the ouster of the former Senate Majority Leader Kipchumba Murkomen and the Chief Whip Senator Susan Kihika. There's been a lot of conversation happening about who is next, where could be the next, place, the National Assembly, the House committees, and whether this is about party loyalty or it's about settling old scores. I don't know, gentlemen, what you can comment about what is happening at the Jubilee Party. Anyone can start on this.
It is one, of course, I belong to the ANC party. My party leader is Musalia Mudavadi. Now, these political games that are usually in parties are common, either inter-party or intra-party. So I think the question of politics is a question of power, the issue of power plays. And I think it is every party that tends to see certain members who may not be within its expectation in terms of following its rules or whatever, may decide to deal with it in whichever way. So, but in the case of Jubilee, I may not be very, very competent to know the intricacies behind, but I will be like any other Kenyan who would observe, or as a politician, I would expect that the changes that happen in a party like Jubilee must be informed by one of the issues of loyalty or the issues of power struggles.
All right, so the timing is what many Kenyans are questioning. Right now, the big issue is the coronavirus, the floods, the locust, and then there is this politics also happening. What do you read from this, Mheshimiwa Mbidhi?
As my colleague has said, I also don't belong to Jubilee. I belong to Wiper Party, and we have no wrangles in Wiper ourselves. Our party is very intact. But you see, when you are in a house, as the head of the house, when you see your children are not behaving the way you would like them, you normally call them and also try to put them in order. So what I am seeing the party leader of Jubilee is doing is putting his party to order so that everybody can behave. So that's what I can say.
All right. I see what you've done there, gentlemen, but thank you so much for creating time for us once again. And we've talked about quite a number of heavy issues affecting Kenyans this particular morning. Thank you for also the proposals we've issued as part of the solutions to some of the issues that we are facing, the floods and the COVID-19 global pandemic. We will be talking about matters politics on another day. This is Newscheck. Thank you so much for creating time for us. What we do here is to ensure that you stay updated with what is happening in the country, as we also expound issues that have formed part of the headlines in the news. My name is Serfine Achieng. Our sign language interpreter is Byron Abuli. Of course, he was assisted by Susan Thuku. We are now going to be paving way for the Swahili version of the program. Tamrini Nancy Okware will take you through that. We'll see you again next week.